Hello everyone, and welcome to my very first ASMR storybook reading. I'm not very familiar with how ASMR works, other than I have to be very quiet and try very hard not to laugh. So I thought I would give it a try today. So I thought I would share with you a story from my favorite children's book that I received as a gift from people who were very special to me. Whenever I was sad or just couldn't sleep, I would read from this book, and it would help me feel better, even though these stories are very short. Well, let's get started. There was once a poor man and woman who lived in a tiny cottage in the woods. Every year they worked hard tending their garden, but their land was small and the soil was rocky. They could grow barely enough food to feed themselves. Their cottage stood next to a witch's castle. The castle's grounds grew more food than the witch could eat, and every year the man and woman watched the vegetables rot on the vines. He crept over the garden wall and filled his sack with peas and squash, potatoes and corn. Just then a voice called, "Drop those vegetables." The man turned and saw the witch looming over him. "You won't get away with stealing from me. When your first child is born, you must give the baby to me," said the witch. A year went by, and a daughter was born to the man and his wife. They named her Rapunzel and kept her hidden in the cottage. The man read stories and played games with her. The woman made up lullabies and sang them to her night and day. The witch watched the cottage from her castle. One day she heard the woman singing. "Lullabies?" snarled the witch. The witch crept up to the cottage and peeked in the windows. There she saw the baby Rapunzel. "A child!" shrieked the witch. Before the man or woman could stop her, the witch snatched Rapunzel from her cradle. The witch carried Rapunzel to her castle and locked her inside. The chambers were dark and lonely, but as the years went by, Rapunzel grew into a lovely girl, well-mannered and bright. Rapunzel was so bright, she began asking questions. "Why are the windows covered so we can't see out?" asked Rapunzel. "What is beyond that big door?" The witch would not reply, but she knew that Rapunzel would try to find her own answers to these questions. So she led Rapunzel to a tower deep in the woods. The tower had no doors and no stairs. The only opening was one small window high above the ground. The witch locked Rapunzel inside. Each morning the witch brought food to Rapunzel. She called up, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." Rapunzel would bend her head out the window and let her hair tumble down. It was so long it reached the ground, and so strong that the witch was able to climb up the shiny locks up to the window. Rapunzel was very lonely in the tower. She sang familiar lullabies to pass the time. One day, a prince from a nearby kingdom heard Rapunzel singing and followed her voice to the tower. The prince realized that the song was coming from inside, but he could not find a way in. He listened to the enchanting music, hoping to see whose voice filled the woods with song. Then he saw the witch creeping through the woods. The prince heard her call out, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." The prince watched in amazement as the shiny golden locks dropped to the ground. "She is by far the most beautiful creature on earth," he said. The prince waited until the witch was gone. Then he called out, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." Rapunzel let down her hair, expecting to see the witch again. When the prince climbed into view, Rapunzel gasped. "Don't be afraid," said the prince. "I heard your beautiful lullabies and wanted to meet you." The prince was the most handsome thing Rapunzel had ever seen. The two fell in love immediately. Rapunzel knew that with the prince's help she could leave the tower. The prince climbed down Rapunzel's hair, then caught her as she leapt to freedom. They set off for the prince's kingdom. They passed a small cottage, and Rapunzel heard a familiar lullaby. They saw an old man and woman inside the cottage. "Your songs are lovely," Rapunzel told the woman. "I sang them to my daughter Rapunzel," said the woman. Rapunzel hugged the man and woman. "I'm Rapunzel," she said. "I've escaped from the witch." Rapunzel sang the lullabies in a full, joyful voice. "These songs have led me back to you," said Rapunzel. The end. Thank you all for listening to my very first ASMR video. If you like what you heard, or if it helped you fall asleep, please leave a like and a comment below. I hope you sleep well. Oyasumi.